Someone has been walking around an East Bay neighborhood throwing rocks, seemingly at random, into whatever kind of window they run into, and then they seem to just run away. You can imagine if this were happening to you and you were footing the bill to fix it, you would be mad, very mad.
I feel like the music for this local news segment is just like 5x too epic for the situation that we're talking about, because in reality, what they're covering in this Oakland neighborhood is an individual that shows up to this neighborhood and starts chucking rocks through any kind of glass window that he can find. And this is despite the fact that it doesn't appear that theft is a part of his motivation. It's a guy who seemingly just wants to destroy, and honestly, this makes sense in the context of California, where they don't hold repeat offenders at any point in time. They just release them over and over again, and the mentally ill are just allowed to roam the streets unchallenged. So obviously, you're going to end up in situations where people who are not in the right state of mind do things that show you they're not in the right state of mind. And what makes this segment particularly interesting, according to the local news media, is that it takes place in RockRidge, Oakland. Get it, RockRidge? If you don't get it, they're going to point it out to you.
Not to mention the fact that some of these incidents could have hurt someone badly. This is happening in the RockRidge neighborhood of Oakland, and yes, RockRidge, the irony is not lost on us.
It's always amazing how the local news can never leave a pun on the table, especially when people are picking up the pieces of the consequences of this particular rock thrower. And yes, that is a pun by me. Thank you. Thank you very much. I absolutely love a pun. And this is what we're going to talk about today. And of course, by the way, you preverts out there, I know you're going to say this local news lady, Sarah Donchi or whatever, she's an attractive lady. And I just want to say, I agree with you. You absolutely disgusting preverts. And I agree, even though she's not even trying. It looks like, honestly, that it was like her day off, but somebody else called in sick. So she had her hair in the bun. She's in relaxed clothing and she showed up anyway. But in my humblest of humble opinions, she pulled it off. And again, I'm not talking about this. I'm just mentioning it because you preverts out there in the audience would obsess over it if I didn't. But before we get into this story, I want to thank everybody who supports this channel and doesn't throw a rock through my window over at actualjusticewarrior.com/join.
Give me the money. Give me the money. Okay.
Driving down the streets just north of Highway 24 in the RockRidge community, you can see boarded up windows scattered in the neighborhood. It was just 3 weeks ago when a rock came flying through the window of Luis Aguirre's home.
So yeah, we start off by getting a look at a boarded up window in this particular neighborhood. And for those of you out there in the audience who are wondering if there's a mostly peaceful civil rights protest occurring in this particular area, even though that is absolutely what it looks like is happening, I assure you that this happens to just be a criminal that is throwing rocks through people's window. There appears to be no civil rights agenda, even though many in the left wing might be confused when they see broken windows that are then boarded up.
We were literally just sleeping, and at 6 a.m. we got rudely awakened at 6 in the morning with a fat rock thrown through our window.
Thankfully, no one was hurt, but he says if it happened any later, either him or his daughter would have been watching TV that Saturday morning. After the incident, he shared what happened on social media.
So we hear from a neighbor right here, and he says that he was woken up at around 6 o'clock in the morning with a rock being hurled through his window. He's also wearing a sweater that has like little white furry balls on it or something of the sort that honestly I can't get on board with. But that being said, his sweater choice aside, the fact is this is obviously unacceptable behavior that should not be tolerated. But again, in the state of California, where they have all these different various laws that go easy on the mentally ill, allow them to roam free, commit these petty acts of vandalism, these petty crimes. It's essentially a process that the residents have to deal with. And I'm sure once they eventually catch the perpetrator in this case, we're going to find that this is not a first-time offense. In addition to that, I will also point out, for those of you who are interested in crack cocaine, the fat rock was a rock like a regular rock, not a fat rock of crack cocaine. I'm sorry, guys. I hate to break it to you. This was not a present being given to the people in this particular household.
We wanted to tell our neighbors, right, make sure that they were aware that this happened. We reached out to anyone who had any footage. That was like our immediate, just trying to track down who did this, what motivation did they try and do.
Aguirre also put up security cameras to hopefully catch the man responsible.
So yeah, he does all the regular, normal, rational things in order to try to figure out what the motivation is behind this. Maybe he's potentially being targeted for a reason, but in reality, it appears, based on what his security cameras will ultimately end up capturing after this instance, it's a guy in the neighborhood that just wants to throw rocks through glass windows. There doesn't appear to be a motivation. Like Alfred said in The Dark Knight, some men just want to watch the world burn, and that appears to be exactly what's going on. Now, of course, I've been scanning this footage. I've been looking into it myself. I've been looking for poverty to see if poverty's actually behind this. Maybe this guy is chucking rocks through glass in this neighborhood in order to feed his starving family. Maybe there's some systemic racism. Maybe there's some mental illness at play. But based on what I saw on the footage, I could not identify any of those suspects. So honestly, if I'm a Democrat in the state of California, I'm at my wit's end. It's almost as if that some people are just destructive. Some people just commit crimes and the only solution is to lock them up. But that is something that we can never accept in the city of Oakland, in the state of California, because as we all know, as we all understand by now, criminals are just innocent Baba Angel Aladdins trying to feed their starving family, and there's just no alternative explanation beyond poverty for their actions.
Within days, the next incident happened. This time, a rock shattered a window of his car.
And we got footage of the individual who did it, and just aimlessly walking in the middle of the street, just stopped and threw the rock at our car.
Now look, again, maybe this is a personal grudge or a personal grievance, but based on the fact that they have surveillance video, and by the way, they have clearer surveillance video than what is pictured right there, it appears that the idea that this might be a personal grievance is just not a thing. But I do want to point out that it's absolutely crucial for you guys to understand that this person is not appearing to steal anything. Again, you saw him throw the rock through this guy's window and then run away. And while it might be true that this individual is targeting him in particular, it's also a great possibility that he happens to just be throwing rocks through people's windows in and around this neighborhood. In fact, that's what some of the reporting indicates. And this guy just won the unlucky lottery twice, in that it was his home and his car, among many other glass that was broken by this individual just chucking rocks for some reason.
Other residents have captured footage of the suspect as well, and have posted these flyers of a man wearing red sweatpants all throughout this neighborhood. They say they've experienced crime in this area, but this feels different.
So yeah, they have these posters that they put up in and around this neighborhood, and I do like the fact that they decided to juxtapose two images of this guy, one of him wandering around, another one of him in mid-motion throwing the rock, so we can at least judge his form, which honestly, not bad based on that particular image. But of course, they end up interviewing neighbors that obviously have dealt with crime before. Again, they're in a nicer area of Oakland, it looks like, but it's still Oakland, and they point out that, yeah, it doesn't seem as malicious, it doesn't seem as motivated as a theft or something like that, but it kind of makes you uneasy that there appears to be no rational explanation for this.
Seeing stuff like this, even though it feels like it's less malicious and more, maybe something else is going on with this individual, it still makes me feel like anxious.
And yeah, I 100% agree. It is very weird that there's no rational basis for this particular attack. But again, this is one of the things that can leave you in a very uneasy position. And this is one of the reasons why allowing your homeless population, and to be clear, we don't know for sure if this guy is homeless. I'm just pointing out that he appears to be wearing the exact same clothes all the time in multiple surveillance videos and other images at all different various times of the day, throwing rocks through people's windows. It's just something that you can't quite understand and rationalize. Like, you can't find, how A leads to B leads to C, and that can make you all the more uncomfortable. And again, we talked about cases like this in the past. Recently, we did a story of a criminal, a repeat offender, who did a machete attack on somebody because his dog was barking. He did a hit and run with a motorcycle. He also ended up attacking somebody for not giving him a credit for a beer. And all of these different crimes are like crimes of chaos. And those are the kind of things that sow discord and basically distrust in a bunch of different communities. And again, it just makes people uneasy to live in and around these areas. It's more reasonable or more rational to understand even horrific crimes when they're motivated and they're like understandable motivations for those crimes than these random acts of violence. And again, it's only a matter of time before this guy who's chucking rocks into glass ends up getting confronted by an individual, and then you see how violent he is, not just toward property, but towards other individuals. And if this is targeted, if I'm totally misreading it, I apologize, but it just appears so similar to other random acts of violence or destruction that have become more and more prominent as the criminal justice system has become more and more lenient on these types of crimes.
Gary says once he posted what happened at his house, more and more of his neighbors have come forward to share similar stories. Many are sharing information and videos, hoping to put an end to the chaos.
So yeah, like I said, even though it happened to him twice, he won the bad lottery 2 different times, it appears that many people in his neighborhood are experiencing different things. Also, in addition to that, for those of you who are listening via podcast and not seeing the video, local news media is so goofy, they decided to stage him getting into his car for no real reason so they could capture it on film. And I'm always a fan of these conversations and how they come about. You know, like when people are doing the walking and talking, they're actually miming the walking and talking for the B-roll, but how these local news agencies are able to use the power of the camera to basically get these people to go along with all these goofy activities. I know this is unrelated to the story at hand, but I found it incredibly funny that in order to give like a visual transition, they made this guy get into his own car, even though that's a really goofy thing to ask somebody to do.
Well, I'm constantly like anxious in any sound I hear now. It's like, all right, what was that? Like, it's definitely shaking up our peace of mind a little bit, but we know it's not like, you know, a widespread, like, you know, theft crime issue, right? It definitely feels like it's just one individual who's very disturbed, and yeah, we're just hoping to get some support to track him down and hopefully get it to stop.
So this is the part where I actually disagree with the person being interviewed. I do feel bad for him. He had his window smashed, his car window smashed. Obviously, he has to come out of pocket in order to pay that. And even if he has insurance, you know, you have deductibles with auto insurance and with homeowners insurance and whatnot. But the fact is, the idea that I would take more comfort in it being a random crazy attack, that means that this guy's not really doing any planning. That means that this guy's not really taking many efforts in order to obscure himself. So the fact that law enforcement isn't tracking him down would make me more uneasy, because I would think about all the other people who are doing much more dangerous, much more violent things that law enforcement is also unable to track down. So I actually think his interpretation, again, is absolutely backwards, but maybe this is a cope because he's experiencing this situation and he's trying to rationalize and say it's not as bad as it actually is. But I'm not of the belief that you kind of obscure or downplay problems like this. But you know what? Those are just my thoughts. I want to know what you guys think of the Rock Thrower of RockRidge down in the comments below. As per usual, if you like this video, show them by leaving a like, subscribe for more content, follow me on my social medias, support me via the support links in the description of this video. This has been me talking about the rock throwing menace. Till next time.